out?
UAPB, Arkansas.
Thank you. I'm going off the top of my head. And UAPB had a great run 2 years ago. So don't think just because Alcorn is coming over to the west side that it's going to be a cakewalk. And when those two get together in the SWAC championship game, be it at the home of the East Division champion or the West Division champion, it's going to be magical. It's going to be special. Now, a lot of folks would love to vacation and see the SWAC championship game at one of those two schools in the state of Florida. But I guarantee you those people from Texas could really care less about making that trip to Florida. They'd much rather have that in the Houston or in Louisiana. So
just to drive down I-10, just the I-10 drive, straight shot.
Yeah, I mean, I-10, you know, everybody's on either I-10 or I-20, it seems like, in the SWAC right now. So, you know, easy travel between, at least to get to close to the schools. Now, you got to get off and go through some two-lane roads to get to a couple of these schools, but it is what it is. You know, once you get there, it's great atmosphere no matter which of these 12 schools that we're going to be playing this championship game at.
All right, well, let's get ready to introduce the 2021 FAMU football schedule. Now, to my knowledge, I'm not sure whether other schools have released their full schedule, but it was a happy new year for Rattler Nation. I see Doc shaking his head no. So other schools have not released their full schedule. So it's a happy new year for Rattler Nation because they can start making travel plans as these dates. Now, we have no times on these dates. Obviously, that'll be determined later. But as of right now, we have dates for a lot of these games on this 11-game schedule for Florida A&M. There's 8 conference games. That's 5 games against Eastern opponents, 3 cross. What is that? Interdivisional or interconference matchups. I guess, is that the right way of saying that?
Yeah. Intra and interdivisional. Intra will be within your division, within your conference, which is the division, and inter, which will be from the other division, the way the vernacular is generally spoken about.
Thank you.
Simplified, you're just talking the Eastern Division and the West cross matrix of those matches.
Right. And then of course, FAMU has 3 non-conference games. So here's the full schedule as it came out, all 11 games. And they first start on September 5th in the Orange Blossom Classic against Jackson State University. Of course, it'll be the fall debut for Coach Prime and Jackson State. This will be a neutral site game in South Florida. Should be a great weekend. That's Labor Day weekend. Jackson State holds a 7-10-2 all-time record against Florida A&M. The very first contest between these two teams was in 1961. FAMU won that game 14-8. The last time these teams played was in 2018. That was Coach Simmons' first year at FAMU. Jackson State with an 18-16 win, but many people will remember that game. Florida A&M had a chance there. I think it was a goal line within maybe 3 or 4 yards of the end zone, an opportunity to win that game. Jackson State has won the last 2 contests against FAMU. Then on September 11th, the first home game for FAMU in Bragg Stadium, that will be against Fort Valley State. FAMU has a 10-1 all-time record against Fort Valley State. Of course, Fort Valley State of the SIAC. The first time these schools played all the way back to 1949, FAMU won that game 39-0. Last time they played was in 2019. FAMU won 57-20. The only time that FAMU lost to Fort Valley was in 1984 when the Wildcats won that ball game 19-14. Then first true road game for the Rattlers will be on September 18th at South Florida against the USF Bulls. The Rattlers are 0-3 all-time against that. An interesting matchup that I'm sure we'll talk to Coach about is he goes up against his former teammate at Clemson for 3 years, Coach Jeff Scott of the Bulls. So the Rattlers have only played South Florida 3 times. They've all been over the last, 15 years. Then moving into the first home SWAC game in Bragg Stadium, October 2nd against Alabama State. The Hornets. Actually, FAMU. Actually, the Hornets have a 18, 17, and 3 record. So just it's been about even all-time series against FAMU. This first game goes back to 1909, Doc. Alabama State, 65-0 that first time. I wonder, lots of questions about that first contest over a century ago. The last time these two teams have played, though, it was 2008. FAMU got a win 30-20. So it's been a good, 12, 13 years since the two teams have played. So that'll be an interesting contest. Then another home game for Florida A&M on October 9th against, I guess now you will say former MEAC rival, South Carolina State. FAMU has a 30-25-2 record against South Carolina State. The first game dating back to 1930. South Carolina State won that game 21-7. Of course, the last time these two teams played, 2019, a great game, 42-38 win for FAMU. That stopped a 6-game losing streak to the Bulldogs for the Rattlers. So that was a great contest. So it'll be, it's kind of good to see. South Carolina State has always been that tough rival for FAMU in the MEAC. And so now that becomes a non-conference game. All right. Second half, we're moving towards the second half of the season here. And FAMU is on the road on October 16th at Alabama A&M. And in Huntsville, Alabama, the Rattlers are 13-2 all time against the Bulldogs. These teams have not played each other since 1979. Alabama A&M won that game 19-14. I think that might be what Drew was talking about an old SIAC matchup. Correct, Drew? Yeah, so
that's the old SIAC rivals.
Yeah, so that was the last time these two teams played. So it's definitely been 40 years since these two teams have met. So that'll be a good road trip for Rattler Nation to go on. Then October 23, back-to-back road games as FAMU will travel to Mississippi Valley State. The Rattlers have only played Mississippi Valley State twice before, winning both of those contests in 1987 and 1990. So traveling out to Itabena, Mississippi will be something of a new venture for those Rattlers, 30-something years ago, or at least we've been Rattlers for 30-plus years. All right, then we start moving into the big showdown, homecoming contest on October 30th. Homecoming in Tallahassee against Grambling State. Surprisingly, Grambling or FAMU has a 5-10 record all time against Grambling. It seems like these teams have only played 15 times. That's kind of shocking when you think about the history of these two teams' programs, the history of these two programs. The first contest dates back to 1955. If I'm not mistaken, Doc, that was Eddie Robinson against Jake Gaither, was it not?
Yeah, a lot of history when, as you said, they hadn't matched up a lot, but when they did match up, usually everything was on the line. And as we know, that means national Black College championships were on the line when they matched up. Amazing.
Yeah, Grambling won that first contest 28-21, but they have not played each other since 2000. That was the last time these two teams have played, so a 20-year gap. Grambling won that game 12-10. Then we get a rematch.
Doug Williams was on the sideline when that game was Circuit City Classic, broadcast on television, a lot of hype. Like I said, everything is on the line when these two teams mix, and that lived up to the bill. It was low scoring, but you're talking about big plays. On the offensive side, they put up points, but even bigger plays on the defensive side to put in stops. That was one for the archives as well.
Doug Williams against Billy Joe, if I'm not mistaken, right? That time, yep. All right, moving forward, November 6th, FAMU traveling to Southern Baton Rouge, Louisiana. FAMU has a 33-26-1 record all time against Southern. Of course, the game of the year, maybe the game of the century, as we like to maybe dub things like that. FAMU won that game 27-21 in 2019. Then staying on the road, FAMU.
Before you jump over to that, when you can't just gloss over that Southern.
I'm sorry.
I know we'll talk about it a little more, but that's one of those ones to get the boils of blood boiling for both of these fans. Great fan base on the like. And this was historical in nature. This went back in terms of, as you talked about, the intra-conference rivals as it was, MEAC and SWAC. This was the longest standing matchup between two conference games until it came to an end a couple of years ago. So the fact that it has been played a couple of times since then, revived the last couple of years, other than obviously COVID-19 slowed it down, and now it becomes a conference matchup. Boy, this is one to keep your eyes on. So just wanted to throw that out there to make sure there was some appropriate love and historical perspective showed up on that matchup.
Well said. Moving over to November 13th, last road game for the Rattlers will be at Arkansas Pine Bluff. This will be the first ever matchup between these two programs. So that, historical first matchup for everyone involved. And then, of course, the Florida Classic on November 20th against Bethune-Cookman, which, who knows, that could not only decide the Florida Classic, but it could decide the East Division, as those things sometimes do. And it should be noted, FAMU has a 49-24-1 all-time record against Bethune. And I know many Wildcats will say, oh, but we've won the last 9. Yes, the last decade has gone to Bethune, but it should be also noted, the longest streak in the series is 19 wins in a row by FAMU. just had to put that out there for anybody who might want to brag about that. All right, let's bring in one of our special guests. We have the head coach of the Florida A&M University Rattlers, Coach Willie Simmons, joining us. Coach, Happy New Year to you. How are you and the family doing?
Happy New Year. It's great to see everyone. It's an honor to be on today, and everyone's doing well down here in Rattler Nation. We're excited to release our schedule, and looks like we're the first ones. I looked online. I think everyone else is kind of still keeping their schedules under wraps, but we're excited to be able to release the schedule January 1. I know Rattler Nation is fired up. I've been checking the blogs, and there's been a lot of trash talking already. So we're looking forward to a great fall slate, a great group of games, and we're excited about the opportunity to get back on the football field.
Yes, sir. Hey, look, I know we only have so much time with you, and there's so many different angles and things that we can talk about related to this. But just real quick before I throw it over to Doc and AD, when you saw the schedule come out, was there any one particular game that maybe you looked at? And obviously you had 6 years spent in the SWAC as an offensive coordinator at Alcorn State, head coach at Prairie View A&M. Any game that you saw that was like, man, that might be emotional or that might be fun to renew that rivalry with those opponents?
Well, obviously, I don't want to give coach speak and say I didn't look past the first game. Obviously, that's the most important one. But yeah, there's so many games on the schedule that are quote unquote marquee games. Starting with the first one, the Orange Blossom Classic, renewing that tremendous classic that we've been a part of for many years, and opening up against Jackson State, which is one of our most fierce rivals. And obviously, with primetime Deion Sanders coaching his first football game at the collegiate level. It's going to be a lot of fanfare. You're talking about two Florida boys, two guys that played at rival colleges. I played at Clemson. He played across the street to Florida State. And now we're coaching in rival schools in the first game of the season, which is a conference game. So that game is very, very exciting and one we're looking forward to. Obviously, like as you alluded to, going down to Tampa, playing South Florida. Obviously Jeff Scott and I came into Clemson in the same year. And we spent 4 years there together, been in contact over the years. Very proud of the success that they had at Clemson and was happy for him to get his first head coaching opportunity. And so to be able to go down to Tampa and play in Raymond James Stadium is something that we're very much looking forward to. And then on down the list, again, just renewing those rivalries with Alabama State, with Southern, obviously, playing Grambling for homecoming is going to be a game that everyone will be excited about. There won't be any motivation needed for that week. And again, ending the season, obviously, in the Florida Classic, and finally, ending this streak going into the new decade here. It's something, again, that this schedule just gives us a lot of great stories. So I would love to be a media personality this year covering FAMU football, because there definitely won't be a shortage of material. So a great schedule, looking forward to it, and our guys will return tomorrow ready to go to work.
With that, I want to jump in here and piggyback off of Bryan. But before I do that, Coach Willie Simmons, let me first say, welcome back to the SWAC.
Glad to be back.
No doubt about it. Let me take a little deeper dive, as we've had a chance to get into some real deep dialogue in terms of you really giving me an understanding of what you have to go through from a mental framework of a coach and getting your team prepared for really any season. So I'm going to ask you to reflect on that a little bit. What, if anything, will be different in heading into the SWAC 2021 schedule as opposed to how you felt heading into your MEAC schedule the last couple of years, or even back from when you were heading into the SWAC schedule when you first began your head coaching stint with Prairie View?
Well, the one thing that jumps out, very similar to my time at Prairie View, is that we're coming right out of the gate in conference play. And that's something that's unique within the landscape of college football. Not many teams start their season in conference play. You typically get a few out-of-conference games to brush up on some things, to experiment with a few personnel decisions and things of that nature. But when you come right out of the gate in conference play, you got to be ready to play. Obviously that game has huge ramifications. This is a divisional game. And so obviously our goal will be to win the East. And so in order to do that, we have to do well against our East competition. And so right out of the gate, we're preparing for a divisional opponent. And that it doesn't necessarily change things in the way you prepare, but it definitely forces you to make sure that you're on your P's and Q's week one. And so being that we won't have played football for over a year and a half, going into that game is definitely going to make for an interesting game. And not sure what's going to happen with the spring schedule. Obviously, the SWAC still has plans to play. And so maybe we'll have an opportunity to scout Jackson State and their new coaching staff. But in the event that the spring season doesn't happen, then obviously we won't have anything to scout them off of. And so that's going to pose a set of challenges as well. But it's part of coaching. It's part of the yearly grind of being a football coach, and the adjustments and changes that you have to account for every single week. And we're going to do the best job we can as a staff to prepare our young men to be successful. But again, those are the things that go into the mental preparation entering the football season, especially when you open up with conference play.
Certainly. Before I pass it on to AD, I'm going to drop a couple of gems in here. You had this experience before when you was at Prairie View against the rival there, Texas-wise, with Texas Southern University, which obviously was a divisional game. And in those matchups, you had new coaches come in as you had to, I guess, kind of establish that as well. And you were 3-0 in those matchups. So for those that like this new sports analytics, maybe that's a key thing coming out of this matchup that people can lean on. So we'll drop a couple of dimes and rabbit holes people can go through without that. And I'll give you some ribbing later in terms of, as I talked about that Prairie View and FAMU matchup, I text you about. I guess now at some point it'll become realistic. And instead of being a celebration bowl, it'll be a SWAC championship game appearance maybe. Go ahead, AD.
Once again, Happy New Year, Coach. And looking at your schedule at first glance as an alumni of Florida A&M, I'm just excited about the schedule, especially the home games. I know Bragg Stadium holds 26,000, and I'm looking at some of these home games and wondering how you're only going to get 26,000 in some of these games. Some of these games look like they're going to draw 30, 35,000. The fire marshal may have to come in there and shut you down on some of these home games. Grambling for homecoming. We all know how that's going to, how many people are going to be at that. But looking at your schedule, when it comes to the non-conference portion of the schedule, we know some of these schedule agreements are year to year, 3 year, 5 years out when they're made. How much influence do you have as a head coach on the non-conference portion of your of the schedule? Kind of take us into that, because a lot of people really are curious about that.
Yeah, so obviously that's a conversation, and our Vice President, Athletics Director, Kortne Gosha, will be on after me. That's a conversation that I think every head coach and athletics director, have. So I always kind of tell him what my vision is as far as scheduling. I don't necessarily tell him the opponents. And so what we try to do, and we both share this philosophy, is we want to have the opportunity to play a guaranteed game. There are many reasons why we still feel those are important, and he can get into those a little bit later. But we'll play a guaranteed game against an FBS opponent. We try to keep it in state or regionally as reasonable as possible. Then we want to play some type of game against an FCS opponent. If we can find a MEAC opponent every year, that would be great. It allows us to continue to kind of build on some of those natural rivalries that we have. And then we want to give a Division II team an opportunity to play us. And we become their guaranteed game. And so that's kind of how we've scheduled the last few years, with one guaranteed game, one FCS game against a Division I FCS opponent, and then one Division II game. And in the future, there will be a couple of opportunities where we'll play two guaranteed games in the same year. But obviously, again, that kind of puts a lot of wear and tear on your football team, especially now that we're entering into the SWAC, where, as you see, every week is going to be a dogfight. There are no cupcake games really within this conference now, and so you want to make sure that you're able to bring a quote unquote loaded team, healthy team into conference play. And so sometimes when you play bigger competition twice in the same season, that can pose a fair set of challenges. But that's typically my scheduling philosophy at this level: one guaranteed game, one game against, of course, likewise competition, and then one game against a Division II opponent.
Coach Simmons, just so that folks know, you have had a very successful record against the current crop of the 10-member SWAC schools, 20-7 overall, 74% win record against those teams. We're not going to include the new team from Florida that's coming in the East. We're not going to include them in the record, even though a lot of people will. But in terms of familiarity with programs and coaches, you only really have three coaches or current existing coaches that you have coached against. Obviously, Coach McNair at your old school, Alcorn. I believe you and he were on the same staff together, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've got that relationship where you split two games. Most recently, games against Southern, where you and Coach Odoms have gone against each other 4 times. You split those. And then you've got the Grambling State games. We know that, those have been tough contests, playing them over on the Western Division. Share something with those watching Rattler Nation about, as you think about the Eastern Division, you've had great success against what's there. But now when you have those mixed games against the West, and this year you got the 2 best teams in the West that you get to play, probably. Arguably, Grambling and Southern, 2 of the 3, I think that a lot of people will have ranked. Give Rattler Nation an idea on what they can expect from the season as they get ready for those contests, and maybe some familiarity that you have with those programs.
Well, obviously, as you alluded to, of the 10 schools that are currently members, obviously Bethune will join the conference in July. I've played against all of them, but again, as far as the head coaches, I've only gone against the 3 that you named. But I'm familiar with many of the other ones. Obviously, Doc Gamble, the head coach at Arkansas Pine Bluff, was on our first staff at Alcorn back in 2012. He was a running backs coach, and so we have a great relationship. Fred McNair, you alluded to, at Alcorn. Fred and I were actually roommates during my time there at Alcorn, so very, very familiar with him, and a great deal of respect for the job that he's done at Alcorn since we left. And again, with Coach Fobb and Coach Odom, we've had some fierce rivalries. But again, knowing Donald Hill Ely, Cornell Maynard, those guys, with the quality of coaches that we have now in the SWAC, rivals any conference in America. And I think that's something that we can all look forward to, just the amount of experience that these coaches bring, their wealth of knowledge, their ability to get their teams to perform at a high level. it's going to make for a great brand of football in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. And that was one of the main reasons why we felt it was necessary for us to make the switch and join the SWAC, in this coming year and beyond. And so looking forward to those great matchups. Like you said, looking forward to those great home and home games that we get to play and filling out our stadium, packing our stadium every Saturday, and then going on the road, having Rattler Nation travel with us, the best fan base in America traveling behind us every week to go on the road and some of these historic SWAC venues to just make for some great game day atmospheres. If you're a fan of college football, I think you might want to find your way down to the southeastern part, or southwestern, so to speak, part of the United States to come to some of these games. Because again, the atmospheres that you will see when we roll into Baton Rouge this fall, when Grambling rolls in Tallahassee this fall, when Alabama State comes here, they're going to be atmospheres that maybe only the SEC rivals, in my opinion. And so going to be great games, great atmospheres, great pageantry. And that's what makes this conference now, in my opinion, the premier conference in FCS football. And we're looking forward to joining it, and we're looking forward to what 2021 and beyond brings to the college football landscape.
No doubt about it, but I'm going to get Bryan out of that trouble there. He talked about the Grambling and Southern, the top teams in the West there. Boy, he forgot that we moved Alcorn over to the West. And
I said media report. I said media. I said media, not me, media.
Then you got this little team out there that Coach happened to coach at called Prairie View, and they over there think they supposed to have something to do with this championship race. So I'm just saying, I don't want to get you in trouble there, Coach. So I'm going to speak up for you. But I will drop some more dimes and gems as we talked about earlier. So I'm going to put you back in trouble. Western Division 9-6 during your stint there. Eastern Division 10-0. Obviously, just 3 of the coaches there. So we'll see what that all means and all that kind of stuff. But even if we start to include, as you've played some non-conference games the last couple of years with me, that record has went to 10-6 in terms of what will be the new Western Division, and 10-3 in terms of the Eastern Division. So it's just fascinating when you do these sports analytics and just dropping these dimes out there, these eggs, Easter eggs, as people would say. But with that said, getting back to the coaching part, besides COVID-19, everybody's going to have to deal with COVID-19. What does that mean? And in a lot of ways, we just don't know. So beyond that, if you would allow me to go a little more into the coach's office, as we've done through the years when we talk about the chalk talk, do you expect any different challenges as opposed to your experience of leading previous teams you have led into conference play? And that's framed in terms of what that looks like for administrators, coaches, players, or even fans, as you talked about having a great fan base that's going to support you in terms of what that looks like. And to some degree, many people would argue one of the best bands in the lands. And I'm not going to get in trouble, so I'm not going to say the best. I know how, as a media person, I'm going to parse my words. I'll let y'all do all that. But certainly, at times, you'll have one of the best bands involved in this. What does that look like? Besides COVID-19, what are some particular challenges that you can tell us that we need to consider that we haven't thought about?
Well, obviously, COVID-19 is the elephant in the room, and we're still enduring all of the things that go into this terrible pandemic that we're a part of. And so seeing what that looks like in 2021, obviously with the vaccine being released, we're starting to make some grounds as far as vaccinating. Obviously, we're behind numbers according to everything that I'm hearing about what we're trying to get out in the form of a vaccination. But that's going to have a profound effect on what college football looks like moving forward. And we're all talking about getting back to our sense of normalcy, but again, none of us know what that looks like. So I would love to think that we'll be able to pack the stadium as AD talked about and get 25,000+ people in Bryan Memorial Stadium every Saturday. I'm not sure that's a reality at this point. Again, will the powers that be feel comfortable allowing fans to be shoulder to shoulder in stadiums moving forward? Will fans feel comfortable coming in the stadiums and packing out venues moving forward? All of those things will be things that we see that we'll have to endure and figure out together collectively moving forward, But aside from that, football is football, and we're going to prepare to play just like we always have. Obviously we have to consider the protocol and the guidelines and the things that COVID has placed on us this past year, even though we didn't play, and what it will look like for the spring and moving forward. But outside of navigating COVID, I think it's going to be pretty much the same. Again, they hadn't changed the dimensions of the field. They hadn't changed the number of players you can put on the field at one time. I mean, football is still going to be football. They're still going to every year meet and convene to try to make the game safer. I do think that there'll be some discussions about the targeting rule and some of the ramifications of punishments or penalties surrounding targeting, even though I do agree with the rule and I agree with the administering of the rule as far as when they call it. Maybe some of the penalties sometimes, may be harsh as far as ejecting the player for an unintentional hit. Again, I'm not an advocate of that. I would like to see them maybe change the rules or tweak the rules a little bit where maybe it's like an NBA flagrant foul. If it's intentional, you get ejected. If it's not intentional, maybe you maybe miss a quarter or something like that, or get a 15-yard penalty and that be it. But other than that, I mean, the games are going to continue to go on. They're going to continue to try to make it safer. But, as long as we got tremendous coaches and players and fan bases around the country like we do, football is still going to be, as you alluded to in the beginning of the show, a religion in this region of the United States. And so, again, we're looking forward to, again, the chance to get back on the football field because it's been a long time coming. And I know Rattler Nation is chomping at the bits. And we're working extremely hard as a coaching staff and as a football team to build and field the football team that can go into the SWAC in year one, be competitive, compete for the Eastern Divisional title, ultimately the SWAC championship, and then go on to represent the SWAC in the Celebration Bowl and walk away with an outright HBCU national championship.
Well, I tell you, plans are in your hands. Before I give it back to AD, I know we're getting up on the clock, so I wanted to sneak this in here and bring out a little bit about people that have gotten to know Coach Willie Simmons, a little bit about the fun side. What is going to be the biggest fun thing that you look forward to?
For me, just being back on the field. And, I spent 6 years in the SWAC. I have a ton of respect for the coaches in that conference. Dr. Charles McClellan, again, we go way back, have a great relationship with him. And even the officiating crew. I put out a tweet during the college football semifinals when I saw Nick Saban run out to the hash marks to contest a call and he didn't get a flag. So I tweeted that, and Eddie Kelly, actually the head of officials, actually texted me. And we joked back and forth about the fact that he did get a flag the second time. So, but again, just my experiences in the SWAC were phenomenal. I had a great 6 years there. I cut my teeth as a head coach in this conference. And again, just some of the games that we played, some of those rivalries, even though we didn't come out on top of all of them, it's some of the most fond memories that I have in coaching. The venues that I've been a part of, going down to Baton Rouge on their homecoming, going to Dallas on the State Fair Classic, opening up against Texas Southern in the Labor Day Classic. I mean, just going back to Loma, Mississippi the first time as a visitor, as opposed to being on the home sideline, so just the long trip to the Itta Bena, Mississippi, driving through the country and just looking at all the livestock, the cows and the horses and all those things. I mean, just things that, again, you just take for granted. And I think COVID-19 more than anything else has really allowed us the chance to reflect on what's important and really, kind of center us back on the things that we love and that we're appreciative of. And my time in this conference has been a great experience. And I'm looking forward to getting back and continuing to grow the history of this conference because, again, you look at FCS football historically, there's no conference that can match what the SWAC has done historically. And now for us to be a part of it as a blue blood program, one of the most historic institutions at this level, again, I have no doubt that we're going to continue to raise the brand of the Southwestern Athletic Conference. And with the coaches that we have, with the institutions we have, and the players that we're able to recruit to place us on a national pedestal, to make the nation take notice, not only to the football we play, but to the institutions that make up this conference and what we've been able to do for young African-American men and women since the late 1800s. And so just honored to be here, honored to be the head coach of this great institution that we call home, and can't wait to get back on the sideline and hopefully dial up a bunch of points like we've done in the past.
With that, it makes all the sense in the world. I would like to say Mike Washington just texted me and he wanted to remind you, he said, since he never got his Prairie View golf cap, he said, when you are coming to the Real Hill on December 4th for the championship game, he said, bring the golf cap behind you and he'll take that one off your hands as the championship matchup with Prairie View A&M and Florida A&M will be on the Real Hill. I got a chuckle. Texas and Charles Bishop is on the text. Obviously, everybody's watching this know that that's part of our team, but inside the HBCU SportsLab, and Charles just grinned and put a hand over his face. So I think he may have a little argument about that. But with that, AD, I kid because I care. This is going to get fun. It's going to get interesting, and we'll see how all this plays out in the fall 2021. But go ahead, AD.
Speaking of Charles Bishop, his favorite team, Jackson State University. You know, Coach, they always say you look at your next game. Your next game is Jackson State University. They've got a brand new coach by the name of Deion Primetime Sanders. There's been a lot of media buzz, not only surrounding Deion Sanders and the Jackson State program, but also around HBCU football, a lot of attention that his hiring has brought to HBCU football. My question to you is, what does a hire like him being in general, not only for HBCU football and for your conference, but as an opponent of Deion Sanders, as you will be for hopefully the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully both of you guys will be able to keep your jobs for that length of time to establish that type of rivalry. What does that mean for the future of HBCU football? You know, that type of attention that's being brought, because everybody's forgotten about your recruiting class that you brought in. All the buzz was about the Jackson State recruiting class. Everybody forgot about the Alcorn recruiting class. Everybody forgot about the Southern recruiting class. So kind of talk about that for me, Coach.
That #1 recruiting class for FAMU a couple years.
Well, obviously, the hiring of Deion, who, as we all know, is a larger than life figure. He is, and of course, you cannot deny the impact that he's had on our culture since his playing days. Deion revolutionized the position. Deion was one of the first ones to have his own shoe. He was one of the first two-sport athletes out there, and one of the first ones to really make his brand a national brand. The Deion Sanders brand became just that. He wasn't just a football player or a baseball player. He was a brand. He is a brand. And so for him to come and become a head coach, especially here at an HBCU, I think it's great for all of us. I think it brings a lot of positive attention to the respective programs that he's going to face. Every week is going to be, this first year, obviously, the spring will have somewhat of an impact, but I think really the fall, when we get back into a full football season, every game that Jackson State plays is going to be on the national spotlight, because everyone is going to want to see what Deion Sanders does as a head football coach. And so that's going to be good for Jackson State, but it's also going to be good for the conference, because I do think it will make people take a deeper look at what we're actually doing at our respective institutions. And so the things that he's been able to do, I tip my hat to him. He's putting together a stellar recruiting class. He hit the ground running. He signed some quality young men into his program. And but hopefully what it does, it makes people take a deeper look at what we're all doing. As you alluded to, we had the number 10 class in the nation last year at the FCS level. Jackson Alcorn has always had strong recruiting classes. Dooley's done a phenomenal job recruiting over there at Prairie View. A&T has had top classes, Tennessee State. Again, so at the HBCU level, we're no strangers to having quality recruiting classes. We're no strangers to putting guys into the NFL, and so I think what it will force people to do now is take a look at us as a whole, and that's only good for the conference. But as far as coaching, I forgot what time kickoff is in the Orange Blossom Classic, but at that point, he's Coach Sanders at that point. He's going to have to get his football team prepared to play and win a football game. And so the pageantry, the hoopla surrounding, who he is, that will diminish come game time. And he understands that, and this is not a knock. He understands that. And I think, he's not a first-time coach. He's a first-time head coach. at this level, but he's not a first-time coach. You know, he's coached high school football for the last few years. They've been extremely successful, you know, at Trinity Christian, and so he understands that on game day, you're a coach. You know, you're not a media personality. You know, you're not a reality TV star. You know, you're a leader of young men, and so he has that tall task of getting his team ready to play in one of the best conferences in football. And the one thing about it, we pride ourselves on bulletin board material. Well, just like we say at FAMU, we get everyone's best shot. I think Jackson State is probably going to get at least every coaching staff's best shot this year, just because, again, there are some coaches that, you know, again, feel like this is their opportunity to kind of show what they're worth going up against Coach Sanders. So, you know, again, it's going to be exciting. The pageantry is going to be phenomenal. It only adds to the storylines that we already have in this conference, you know, with us and our in-state rival joining us in the SWAC this year. And again, if you're a reporter, I think you'll be hard-pressed to find better stories than you'll find for the 2021 football season down in the Southwestern Athletic Conference.
And by the way, on our live feed, Michael Perry Jr. says that Grambling will be homecoming spoilers. Just wanted to throw that out there to you for some bulletin board material for you.
They've already started.
They chiming in on the chat right now, Coach.
I understand. Well, hey, again, I have another pride obligation I have to get to, but I just want to say this to Dr. Cavil, and he knows I poke him all the time. You know, hopefully we'll get a chance to bring you know, the Prairie View Panthers down here to Tallahassee so we can show them why we're called the highest of 7 hills. We'll walk everyone, all the Prairie View alum, all the players and coaches, everyone who wears the purple and gold. We'll walk you through Tallahassee. We'll let you walk this hilly campus so you'll see what the hills look like. We're the highest of 7 hills for a reason. And all I know during my time at Prairie View, I got to walk on a flat surface every day. And I was like, well, we call us up the hill, but this whole campus is flat. We're Prairie View, you know, but
yeah. Again, a little mix up between the prairie and the hill.
Yeah. little bit, you know, but again, it's a great place. I love it there. Coach Dooley's doing a great job there, but hopefully we'll get to do that. Hopefully we'll get to bring everyone down here to Tallahassee. So we'll let y'all walk this campus and see if you can, don't wear heels. I just tell you them, but don't wear high heels because you will struggle. Wear some flats because your calf muscles will be on fire by the time you get to walking the hills at Florida A&M University. I promise you that.
And you talk to two people who live there.
Tell Miss Simmons I said hello. And with that, I want to make sure I shout out to my wife, Alabama A&M graduate, because she's going to want to get into some of this once she watches, and I don't say anything about the hill up there at Alabama A&M. And so we'll go back and forth all year long in regards to who truly has the highest hills, as they say around these parts. That should be interesting as we figure that out.
Coach Simmons, thank you for your time. You've been gracious. I know you got another engagement that you have to get to. We could do this all day, and maybe we'll do some other stuff later on in the spring or summer. So thank you, Coach. Have a great New Year, and we look forward to talking to you again.
You guys do the same. I appreciate it. Happy New Year.
And I'll let Paul know what your thoughts are too.
You know, that's the
Go Rattlers.
Yeah. Hey, look, guys, that's the fun. I mean, look, Rattler Nation, we've had some interesting back and forths with some schools over the years, but there has never been more heated discussion. Now I'm going back to discussion boards. I mean, shout out to the old MEAC fans and that crew back there. But back in the day, back before the social media really blew up. But anytime there was a MEAC SWAC, FAMU versus SWAC commentary, that's when, I mean, other than Bethune-Cookman, it got heated. It was an interesting discussion. So now that FAMU and Bethune is all a part of this mix, I mean, that is outstanding. Let's transition for a second. We had a chance to talk to Coach Simmons. Let's bring in the from the administrator level, the VP and athletic director at Florida A&M University, VP Kortne Gosha. VP Gosha, Happy New Year to you, sir.
Happy New Year to you, Bryan. We're excited to be here, and I had the privilege and honor to hear some of this banter. So we're really excited about it.
When you think about, I mean, that was just a small sliver of what being a part of the SWAC will bring. What are your thoughts as you think about what FAMU is entering into beginning, what is it, July 1, 2021, correct?
Yeah, July 1. Well, I can tell you this, you know, as an administrator, I'm typically pretty reserved, but I got dumped into all these message boards and all this other stuff. So I definitely got to get my what I call SWAC talk. I got to get it ready because it's not for the faint of heart.
No, it is not. No, it is not.
Yeah. Between in those meetings, I'm sure that you're starting to have with the other VPs and ADs in those press boxes and all that kind of stuff. It gets real interesting. You're like, hold on, man, I didn't know we had to act on this characteristic.
No, but it's been good. It's been good.
So VP Gosha, with the release of the schedule, you know, I don't want to. I know Doc's got a few questions, so I hope I'm not stepping on anything that Doc is going to ask you. But give us your just general thoughts about what we have here on this schedule in terms of the opponents, but more so maybe go from the non-conference because it was interesting to hear the approach that Coach Simmons talked about where you have one guaranteed matchup, you've got a FCS matchup, and this year it'll be a MEAC rival, South Carolina State, and then you have that sort of Division II game, which ends up being a guarantee. And I know a lot of people sometimes always are like, well, why are you playing a Division II team, or, you know, so on and so forth. But talk maybe before, I know Doc will maybe talk about the SWAC side of the scheduling, but maybe talk a little bit about the non-conference scheduling philosophy that you and Coach Simmons go through.
Absolutely. So I would say very similar to Coach Simmons. Our schedule philosophy is, you know, we kind of come together and really talk about the vision for the program, you know, where we want to go. We want to compete at the highest levels. So, you know, we don't want a soft schedule. We want a very competitive schedule. Some of our non-conference games were predetermined going into this year, and, you know, such as South Florida. But it's great for us. We've got 7 games in the state of Florida. So that's huge. You know, you talk about Rattler Nation, and it's so much larger than Tallahassee. And so for us to get to Miami, the southern part of the state, to put our family down there, you know, excited about the Orange Blossom Classic. You know, the game in Orlando that happens every year where you know, we pack Camping World Stadium out. And so for us, we're really excited about that, and now an opportunity to play in Tampa. And so I would certainly, we are anticipating the Marching 100 being a part of our traveling squad so that we can show the world what we know, that we have the best band in all the land. I went ahead and said it, Doc, the best band in all the land. And so we're really excited about being able to have them accompany the best football team in the country to these locations.
Well said, DP Gosha. Well said, Doc.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get into this. I'm staying clean. I know how this goes, but I will reach out to the other side and tie this in a little bit before I get into my question, because I do understand that you are a member of this great fraternity. And so when we talk about the HBCU sports culture, speaking in the code a little bit here, and some folks will recognize this, but you starting to already hear this energy between Eta Gamma chapter and the Beta Nu chapter and the Delta Gamma chapter, talking about how they're going to ascend on the hill down there or bring you all up to the hill. So it's getting interesting when you start to see the multipliers of this different culture, you know, as I like to call it, the sporting HBCU culture. But it crosses so many genres in terms of what that looks like. And so I wanted to take a deeper dive to play off again what Bryan said in regards to the non-conference and how important that you make that point. There's 7 games in the state of Florida, which makes a lot of sense. And I like the magic as an administrator that you illustrated of how you get that done, particularly in this COVID-19 as we move forward and doing it for your fan base. But let's look a little deeper in terms of administrator, in terms of the SWAC side of this, the SWAC schedule. Mm-hmm. As an administrator, what stands out most about FAMU's SWAC 2021 schedule?
Well, you know, I would say first and foremost, and I'd like to give a nod to a lot of the administrators that make up the SWAC. Ashley Robinson, good friend, longtime friend of mine, an opportunity now to work with him. We're really excited about the future of both of our programs. And I told him that I needed my bonus before the new year, because I needed my bonus for him landing Coach Prime, because I wouldn't let him talk to Willie. So let's just set the record straight on that. But have much respect for Ashley, and obviously a heck of a hire that I think has really raised a lot of eyebrows. And I'm really big on the all tides rise together. And so really excited about what he's done. But again, being able to get in a room with like-minded administrators and talk about how we can take our conference and our programs to the next level on a national scale, I think we've done it. I think when you talk about perennial brands, as we talked about being able to pack out stadiums, there's not a stadium in this conference that, quite frankly, may have an empty seat when you put some of these brands together. I can't tell you the Orange Blossom folks have been wearing me out. I mean, people are just excited. People who aren't even HBCU grads are just really excited. You talked about the Greek organizations who are now plotting, like, hey, we're coming to Tallahassee in droves for this reason on many levels, and the atmosphere that not only it creates on a game day, but around the what I consider Black excellence, being able to take our institutions, the historic backgrounds of our institutions, and bring them together in a mighty way. And now, I'll be honest with you, I think it's also positioned us to demand our rightful seat at the table. You start talking about, TV deals and media exposure. I agree with Coach Prime, a lot of things he said. And to some degree, he's right. But I think collectively as a SWAC now, when you think about the brands that are in the league, we can now go to the ESPNs of the world, the ABCs of the world, and say, hey, you might want to take a look at this. And this is the value that it creates. You're seeing it around the country with some of the majority leagues. And so we're not certainly exclusive, in that category. So we're really excited about that.
No doubt about it. Jump in, Delta Phi, Beta Sig, they all chiming in the bits, as they call it down there, Beta Sigma. They shorten it to Beta Sig. And as you travel those paths, you know exactly what we're talking about this. So yeah, it's getting interesting when you talk about this. And to give it love, it's not just one fraternity or one sorority. They're all getting in this mix, talking in the background in terms of their subgroups, chiming each other, whether it's in Houston, as you talked about the importance as you looked at the SWAC and wanting to get in that footprint. Dallas, for example, in terms of what that looks like. Obviously in Atlanta, where it's everything and everybody wants to end up in terms of closing out the season, because that means you're playing in a bowl game and for a national championship. Thank you for that answer. I'll chime back in, but with that, let me pass it to AD.
Coach Gosha, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
All right. And I'm going to ask you a question. I think you heard the question that I asked Coach Simmons earlier. Kind of want to get into some of the deeper workings of putting the schedule together. You obviously the SWAC portion takes care of itself. You're going to know your opponents. It's just a matter of getting with the conference office, setting the dates. But you've already talked about the philosophy of the three type of opponents that you guys look at. But as far as going out and getting those opponents, because we know some of these schedule agreements are 5-10 years out in advance, right now, as of right now. Some of them are, every 2 years, 3 years. And then you got the dynamic of there were non-conference games that were scheduled for 2020 that you're potentially going to have to adjust into your future schedule framework. So kind of take us behind the scenes with as much as you can share about what goes into making a schedule from an athletic director's point of view, and how all those schedule agreements and all those moving targets play into putting a schedule together.
It's certainly something that comes across my desk on a weekly basis. Not just this year's schedule. Right now, I'll be honest with you, we're looking at 2029 and 2030, 2031 right now. We have been really, really aggressive to make sure that we created schedules that fit in our model. As Coach Simmons said, you know, we're really interested in playing one game guarantee. We're interested in playing a Division II, and then staying very regional in that. And so you'll see, you know, I think it broke a couple of weeks ago, we'll be playing North Carolina in future years. We'll be playing South Florida in future years, Florida. Miami is another one, and some additional ones to come. But the strategy along with that is not just to play regional matchups, but to make sure that, you know, certain objectives are accomplished. You know, for us, it's about recruiting the students to the university. It's about national profile. We want to play people where we have an opportunity to get mainstream, you know, to get on the ABCs and the prime networks, those opportunities to do so. Matter of fact, yesterday our basketball team played South Carolina on the SEC network and gave them a run for it. That's the type of exposure we want, because we want people to understand that, you know, we compete, and we do it in a grand way. And so that's really important to us. As it pertains to the SWAC, Dr. Charles McClellan did a phenomenal job really working with us, and he cast a wide vision for his 10-year projective schedule. And I'll say this, we're going to get an opportunity to play every team in the SWAC. That's huge. That's huge on many levels. You talk about the alumni bases. You know, one of our larger alumni, you know, chapters is in Dallas. You know, for us to kind of get to Texas and to play some games out that way, that's a huge advantage that we haven't had in previous years, you know, being associated with the MEAC. And then, quite frankly, you know, we are still going to play some of our MEAC peers. As you can see, South Carolina State's on our schedule this year. You know, we still have, you know, some future dates that we still look forward to playing some of those members. So they won't certainly go away. But our philosophy, again, is that all ties rise together. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a very strong conference schedule. They were very strong non-conference wise. And again, if you're going to play a non-conference game, you know, we wanted to mean something. If you're going to play a guarantee, you make sure you get enough money to where it's worth the game. And in past years, we've played some that didn't make a lot of sense to us. So we've made sure that we work with our head football coach and that we're articulating his vision as well.
VP Gosha, what from a athletic department, from an overall athletic department perspective, what do you anticipate the most significant difference being for your department this first year moving into the SWAC compared to the previous years in the MEAC? And does this time where you don't have very many sports playing, does this allow you extra time to be ready for whatever might be coming 6-7 months down the road?
Absolutely. It's definitely been a weird year. This opportunity not to compete has certainly allowed us an opportunity to kind of reset, to make sure that we're prepared, but then to also leverage some major relationships. You know, similar to kind of what's going on at Jackson State, I think the move to SWAC for us has increased sponsorship and people who want to be engaged with us. From a TV and exposure perspective, it's allowed the commissioner now to say, you know what, I've got some major TV markets. You know, we now have Florida. You know, we've got New Orleans. You know, we've got Texas. We've got Houston. You know, and so again, from a leveraging perspective, I think there's some opportunities to generate significantly more revenue from an athletic department's perspective. But then too, on a week to week, and this is obviously COVID driven, but you know, we hope that in 6 months from now we're in a different place. I firmly believe that there's not a game on our schedule where we can't sell out our home stadium. And then quite frankly, I know how the Rattlers travel and how we roll. And we're looking forward to obviously exploring some of our membership at the SWAC and to bringing, you know, our fans to some of these great locations. And so I think you'll see, you know, gate receipts, advertisement and sponsorship increase significantly.
No doubt about that. I know your time is valuable. As we start to wrap this up, I did want to get in this question before all that comes to the fold. You talked about the best band in the land in terms of the Marching 100. So I wanted to ask the question in regards to that, follow up that a little deeper. Are you able to work with the VP of Student Services or whatever it's called at FAMU and the band director of the Marching 100 of the scheduling potential about band trips to support the football team during this fall semester? Has that started to engage yet, or does that come down the road a little bit?
Absolutely. I think when our initial conversation started around the SWAC, and one of our reasons for doing that is the geography now works. We can put our band on a bus and get to, Alabama A&M or Alabama State in a couple of hours. We can get to Baton Rouge. And so some of these things are now feasible. We've had the conversation. Dr. Chipman is ready and ready to go. And so, again, as we said, earlier, we're excited about getting our football team to some of these locations. But, to have the complement of the 100, we plan to show up and show out in all facets. And so, we're excited about that. Our band is excited about it. It renews some old rivalries, not only, for our teams, but for our bands. We don't need to go to the Battle of Bands in Atlanta because we're going to have it every week in the SWAC.
There you go. There you go. Well said. Well said. Go ahead, AD.
All right, Coach. As a Rattler, I really have to know this. First of all, kudos to you and your staff for being able to go out and get the money, that much needed money for the stadium upgrades at Bragg Memorial Stadium. So if you could, VP Gosha, give us an update on where we're at in that project, especially considering COVID starts and stops so many things that's going on in our nation right now. And will it be complete in time for the fall season? Do you anticipate it being complete in time for the fall season? And if not, what type of adjustments may we see in the fall as they continue to work towards the goal of refurbishing Bragg Memorial Stadium?
Great question. But to your point, we were able to land a $10 million grant to really reinvest in the Bragg Memorial Stadium. That project will start here in a couple of weeks. So you will start to see kind of the deconstruction of the main structure start here in January. That will be phase one of the project. So phase one will be complete, which will be all new seating in the bowl of the stadium. And then phase two will actually start at the conclusion of the the conclusion of the SWAC championship next year here in Tallahassee.
You heard that, Doc, didn't you?
Yeah, I heard that.
So I know I heard some folks from Prairieville saying, the Hill, we will gladly welcome them to Tallahassee for the SWAC championship.
This is good. I like you said you wasn't sure about this SWAC talk. You learned pretty quick there, Kortne.
But phase two, which will include a lot of the stuff that I tell people is kind of the sexy stuff, the new sound system and lighting and restrooms and all of those things will happen in phase two, and we'll be ready to go for our second year in the SWAC. So it's going to be a 2-year project, but we're really excited to be able to keep Bragg Memorial Stadium a valuable option for us. And we're going to continue to push. 2020 was bittersweet. There was a lot of sweet, even though it was a bitter year. But I can tell you this, we'll probably be back on this show here in a couple of weeks. We've got some major announcements that we're going to start 2021 with. That's not going to be just transformational for FAMU, but for all HBCUs, and we're going to lead that charge. And so we're really excited about that.
Well, I think you know how to reach each and every one on this panel. Go Shay with that information. Text, email, phone call. We'll all be glad to help you push that and disseminate that information out to the masses.
No doubt.
Yeah, I like the tease. Like I said, you're good at what you do. Before we get to Bryan, because I know we want to close it out, but I wanted to show some love outside of football. Strategy-wise, in terms of the components, football and volleyball, how is that looking in regards to opening it up? I know women's soccer is not a part of the equation yet, and maybe that's something that you can jump in there and tease us with as well. But specifically about volleyball, how's that looking?
So really good, very promising for us. Very challenging, the fact that we didn't compete in volleyball and won't compete in volleyball this year. but we had a championship caliber team. I think all but one of our young ladies will return, but we're really excited about it. Our coach, Gokhan, thinks that we're going to fit in just fine in SWAC. And so we're really excited about that. And many of you guys who know our storied history in volleyball, I think we're the only HBCU who's ever hosted an NCAA regional. And so, we look forward to getting back to those days, showcasing, one of the best facilities in the country, for our volleyball program. And so that's just one of the other high watermarks that our program has. But our young ladies have been training and practicing, and our staff's done a really good job, even in this challenging time of not competing, making sure that we're focused on our academic mission, so that when the time's right, we're ready to go. None of our programs will be on any postseason bans or NCAA penalties, and so the Rattlers are ready to strike.
No doubt about it. As you talk about that, I got my eyes on you coming out of Texas, where we think we can play some basketball as well with Texas Southern and Prairie View. Now, I understand FAMU was undefeated in that new state-of-the-art arena that you have on the men's side. So I'm like, and I saw what you did against South Carolina, got that big win last year. So yeah, something kind of made me nervous about the Rattlers on the men's side, and obviously you're building it for the women's as well. With that, Bryan, jump in here and go ahead and finalize what we got to do here.
Well, VP Gosha, before I wanted you to have the last word and sort of let Rattler Nation talk about, or give you an opportunity to talk to Rattler Nation about what they need to do in terms of tickets and all of the things that go on with season tickets or purchasing tickets and all the extra stuff. But a thought came to mind real quick. So, and if you don't have an answer just yet, I understand. But we've had discussions regarding the fact that this COVID-19 year has affected what future scholarships will look like for athletic teams. I heard it said on several broadcasts as I'm watching college bowl games that everybody almost gets a free year or an extra year. Have you, and on an administrative level, have the discussions begun in terms of figuring out what that is going to look like? How is that going to play itself out? And obviously, if it's an early question, I understand, but I figure since I had you, an administrator, just kind of get your thoughts on that.
It is a great question. To be frank with you, I think the NCAA got it right. All of the circumstances that this year's thrown at us are it's not the young men and women's faults. And so obviously, it is a tough conversation because the scholarship cost is still there. Sure. There are incoming freshmen that have been recruited or need to be recruited. And so there are some tough decisions that are made. We've had a few student athletes to say, you know what, I'm a senior, I'm moving forward in the next phase of my life. I got a job, or, I've got I want to start my master's. And so, we've been very diligent in helping our student athletes, whatever they choose. The byproduct of that is some of them are going to choose to stay around, and it will affect your incoming recruiting, and it will affect your budgets from a scholarship perspective. Some sports have limitations on scholarships, and so it's really this unknown continual puzzle that athletic directors are really having to put together right now. It is going to be a challenge, but I would say this, and not just at FAMU, scholarship investments are very important right now. So for any donors or alumni out there, if you really want to support your programs, your teams, donate. We really all need you to donate in a mighty way right now. I know everybody's expecting some stimulus money. It's not as big as we would have hoped, but take 10%, as the pastor would say, and send it, to your athletic programs, because there are really some dire needs. And COVID-19 is not going to be a one-year challenge for most departments. It's going to be a 2 to 3 year process to get back to what we know is normal. And so again, any way you can donate and support your programs, I would highly encourage you to do so. I know for us at FAMU, the Rattler Athletic Fund, we've raised almost $1 million in a year that has really helped us close the gap, and so any way you can do that, that'd be great.
Well said. And that's a key point. And like I said, that's it's good to hear that that is in the discussion and in the room, because it's something I know AD and I have talked about, and Doc, we've talked about that. And I think every media person or HBCU fan or alum, it's something you got to consider about giving to your university, because there are student athletes. It's got to be very tough for the incoming freshmen. It's going to be tough on the outgoing seniors. And the fact that the NCAA has given everybody an extra year just creates challenges for the schools that don't have Alabama money, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? So, but let me close. I know your time is precious. Let Rattler Nation know what, or give them the background and what they need to know in terms of season tickets, individual tickets, everything they need to know to be a part of the first 2021 season in the SWAC.
Absolutely. Well, we released a little bit of a teaser video, and it's called 21 Questions. We're getting a lot of questions about, hey, is Chad going to be on the staff? Is Brad going to be fixed? And, how are we going to do against the guy making the Subway commercials and all that, blase. Is the 100 going to travel? And what we've told people is, look, we have a very simple motto, and that's, we're going to leave no doubt. So get in while you can. Buy your season tickets. They will go on sale January the 31st. Rattler Athletic Fund members, you will get priority in advance, along with some discounts. And so don't wait till the last minute, because I can promise you there may not be any tickets to get. So again, jump in. We're encouraging people, get your tickets early. We can do payment plans. We do all that. So just get in the boat. And this inaugural season is something you're not going to want to miss, starting with the Orange Blossom Classic down in Miami Labor Day weekend. And so really excited about that. And for all of our naysayers in the SWAC, just always remember that the Rattlers will strike, and strike again. So we're ready. We're ready for 21, baby.
Well said, VP Gosha. Just to clarify. There you go. Put that hat on, Drew. Hold on. I may have to put mine on. I'm gonna be a homer as well here. So real quick now, for season tickets, does the Orange Blossom Classic? Oh, come on, Doc. You got a FAMU hat there. Come on, Doc. Put it on. It's all SWAC love now. It's SWAC love. SWAC love. There we go. There we go. SWAC love. So is the Orange Blossom Classic a part of the season ticket package? Is the Florida Classic part of the season ticket? That was just one quick question that came to mind for me. Correct.
So for a lot of our season ticket holders that renewed last year, they got lucky. So the Orange Blossom Classic tickets are included in those packages. So if you bought last year, you're good to go. All right. For this year, the Orange Blossom is not, but the Florida Classic always is a part of our season ticket package. And so, so again, get in, join the Rattler Athletic Fund. We can certainly get you whatever package you may need. For some of those who may not come to every game, but want to come to select ones, let us know, and we'll get you a special package put together.
Okay, and they can go to
Shay. That was on the shield. You owe me one. That was on the shield, bro.
Okay, I got
you. And so, in order to orangeblossomclassic.com, for anyone looking for ticket information that didn't buy season tickets previously, tickets. I'm looking at the website right now. Tickets on sale now, September 5th, 2021. FAMU versus Jackson State. That'll be a big game, and so grab your tickets now while you can. So VP Gosha, thank you for your time, and we look forward to talking with you more.
And it's always a privilege and an honor.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All
Bangs
right.
up.
Bangs up. Yes, sir.
I can't do that one, man.
All right. So, okay, Doc, I'm gonna take my hat off now because I'll be a homer now. We had to be a homer. All right, so gentlemen, before we close, let's just do one quick recap again of the FAMU schedule. Beginning, of course, the Orange Blossom Classic. And as we go, I'm just gonna shout out, if you guys jump in, any quick thoughts as we go through these games. September 5th, Orange Blossom Classic against Jackson State. September 11th.
Yeah, that one goes without saying. When you talk about that Jackson, when he kicks things off, like I said, it's a Eastern Division game. So to kick things off with a conference game within your division is huge. And then you add on the fact that it's Jackson State, a long-time rival that goes back to some national black college championships. And then you add on the cherry to the top that you have Coach Willie Simmons. They coach right down there with the neighbors.
We've won against Jackson State all time.
Yeah, and then you talk about Dion, Coach Prime being in the fold. That's just interesting when you kick things off.
Yeah, especially Hard Rock Stadium holds 65,000. If we've gotten everything solved with COVID by then, it's going to see how close we get to that 65,000 capacity in that particular stadium, in that particular community, and how many non-HBCU media members and football fans will be in live attendance at that game.
Yeah, definitely. And we should also mention, I mean, look, we will also be down there that weekend. There will be a HBCU contest between Edward Waters College and Florida Memorial taking place I believe sort of Blossom Classic on a Sunday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah, so that means on Saturday, that'll be the EWC FMU game. So that'll be
2-for-1 HBCU football weekend.
It should be great.
And that's the holiday weekend too, so you got Monday to recover.
Yes, sir. Exactly. First home game in Bragg, September 11th, Fort Valley State. That is SIAC contest, Fort Valley. Then I went to the last game when they played Fort Valley. That game surprisingly had a good crowd. Fort Valley brought a good crowd to that particular game, coming straight out of South Georgia down into Bragg. So, let me ask this: is there a Division II opponent that you would like to see FAMU schedule that maybe they haven't in recent years, Doc or AD?
Well, I would love to see FAMU Tuskegee play again, because once again, that's that old SIAC rival. Last time they played was in Mobile, Alabama. I believe that was 2016, I believe. And the only reason I remember that because I had the shirt on, I can't lose, because I went to both schools, so I was going to win no matter what in that particular game. But I would like Savannah FAMU to rekindle old MEAC rivals. Would be an interesting one. I think that would be a good crowd. And since we're sticking with schools in Georgia, Morehouse. FAMU always goes to Atlanta to play a game. Why not bring Atlanta to Tallahassee for a particular game?
That's a good one.
I like the first two you talked about with Tuskegee and Savannah State. I'm not so much on the hot one on Morehouse, but I do like the idea that you're talking about Atlanta. And so if I was going to cross over, I'd like to see Clark Atlanta University in terms of that. And I'm going to speak it in terms of moving forward. If there is ever an expansion with Tennessee State really realizing what it means to rejoin the HBCU culture, the next closest program that I'd like to see in to kind of give a private school partnership to Bethune-Cookman University, and I know that's a different conversation there. I would like to see a Clark Atlanta University. So if you're talking about Division II to kind of set up where things may go with further expansion, conference churning, it would be Clark Atlanta University, along with the ones that you first mentioned.
That's a good point, Doc. FAMU travels to Tampa, Florida, September 18th to take on South Florida. Now, South Florida had a 1-9 record this past year. Now, obviously, that's the first year under Coach Jeff Scott. It'll be interesting to see how historically over the past 3 times that FAMU played, those scores they weren't necessarily close. 3+ touchdowns, I think. But it's interesting to see, can FAMU get a guaranteed game against an opponent that allows them to really and look, I'm going to say this, that really gives them a chance to get a win. Obviously, A&T scheduled, for example, schools, Charlotte,
Elon a couple of years ago.
Well, no, East Carolina, I think. Well, it was they were the mid-level FBS, non-Power 5 FBS teams, right?
Right.
That really they beat because they were almost probably on equal par. Can FAMU find an FCS opponent or FBS opponent like that. That gives you
a mid-major instead of a
game that gives you a chance to get a win and get a check. I mean, you know, we know the Sam Washington clip. You know, give me my money. We understand, and that A&T has rode that to the bank. But that was that's scheduling genius right there in your own state.
But how much, and I don't know what the number was, but how much was that game versus East Carolina worth to A&T, whereas a game versus South Florida for FAMU? Probably going to have the first digit's probably going to change on that South Florida game, considering South Florida is a bigger program. So that goes back in with A.D. Gosha said. What's the priority as far as getting that competitive balance and for the recruiting? The game in South Florida makes sense because FAMU recruits out of that Tampa area. There are no other non-P5 type schools in that area where FAMU could get a recruiting advantage in addition to getting a check, such as you have with the North Carolina schools. There are plenty of other schools where you can get that. So I think that may be the dynamic there, Bryan.
Well, you got FIU, FAU down in South Florida. I mean, those are two mid.
But why take those when you're already going down there playing your Orange Blossom Classic or other things?
I got you.
in the Miami area.
Good point.
Yeah, I think both of y'all are making intriguing points, and that's the kind of chicken or egg question. How much of it is just the financial benefit, and how much is the difference in that? And as well as what about playing teams that you put yourself in a better position to win and get that signature FBS win, if you would. East Carolina, in some ways, to me, was kind of an anomaly. Which is when you're probably catching a team when you got a transition in the coach, whether it's a team transitioning out of a coach or bringing a coach in. Also, you have to study a little deeper in seeing what is the age of that team, particularly in certain positions. Is it a younger type team where you can take advantage of a team just trying to learn a new system, whether it's from an old coach or a new coach, or is this a more mature older team, which makes it difficult? Then you have the facet when you're talking about with Kent State, which is another team where you talked about North Carolina was able to get in. And so, yes, some of those payouts will be a little different. But like in East Carolina, you're talking about a team that probably played you pretty significant. But you also need to look at what is the travel cost. Are you talking about a bus trip versus an airfare trip? Even in South Florida, as you all know, just because it's in the state, doesn't mean that you can take a bus trip to it. Because Florida, depending on where you're going, can be similar to Texas when you're talking about going from one side to the other side. You can't just talk about being in the state and taking a bus trip. And so those are some kind of things that you look at your cost differential. Is it a bus trip away, which is going to help you be able to take whatever that payout is and put it into your pocket? And then sometimes you just get fortunate where you're playing a team that you're seeking a matchup where there's a team that really needs a matchup, and they'll overpay you for the matchup because they're in a situation where they just need a game. So all these things are variables that you are essentially talking about where it gets a little challenging. But if we know anything about VP Kortne Gosha, those are things that he certainly looks at trying to figure out how do you create the best scenario, both financially and within a matchup that you can be competitive in, and next thing you know, you can ultimately get that win.
Last thought on this, two of them that would be good: Georgia Southern, Georgia State.
Okay.
I like
bus trips within the region.
Southern.
Georgia State and Atlanta would be huge.
Yeah, I think there's some things about playing in Atlanta with those things, but if I was going to take the two, Georgia Southern not really in Atlanta, it's outside of it. It'd be Georgia State. Georgia State, if you remember, they got beat by Tennessee State a couple of years ago. But Georgia State is starting to roll now. Both of those teams went to a bowl game and played really good. When you start talking about the Sun Belt Conference, people probably think about Sun Belt Conference as these directional schools, but they did really well in their bowl game. You see with Coastal Carolina, yeah, they got nipped, but we saw what they did all season. But the rest of the teams in the Sun Belt all won. That's a conference that's on the move. So I think you want to look more at the Conference USA that is struggling a little bit, even though those are bigger schools. I don't know what's going on, but they have struggled of late. But you want to stay away from the American Conference if you can, because they're edging on that Power 6 envelope. They didn't do so well this year, but the last couple of years, they've been putting teams right on the edge, as we know, whether it was Central Florida, Cincinnati this year, Houston a couple of years ago. That's the conference that is financially in a position where they'll pay you big time, but you're going to pay for it in terms of that score. So you got to throw all those things in the mix.
Right.
UAB would be a good one also with the right mix in the SWAC schedule. If you happen to catch where you're not playing both of the Alabama schools in Alabama, picking up a UAB during that off year may be another move also.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Alabama. Week 4 and week 5 are 2 more games for FAMU in the state of Florida. October 2nd, Alabama State is the home opponent, SWAC contest, East Division matchup. Then you have October 9th against South Carolina State. And I noticed that it'll probably run like this. You won't make 2 trips to Alabama. You'll play one you either play Alabama State at home or you host Alabama State and you'll travel to Alabama A&M as they do this year.
Yep. Right. That was purposeful too. You'll see that with the Texas schools and Pine Bluff as well in terms of their scheduling matrix. They really did a deep dive in terms of under Dr. Charles McCullin to make sure, and the presidents were really excited when they figured a way to do this, is that you won't see teams having to travel to the opposite extremes of divisions every other year in that facet, the same year. But I really like the Alabama State matchups, getting back into it, because that's the first on-campus game with a SWAC team coming in to the campus. So you kick things off really in earnest in terms of what that looks like. And you just talking about regional, the vicinity in terms of that being a short trip. So you got to believe that a lot of Alabama State fans will come down there really strong. And for both FAMU and Alabama State fans in Atlanta, that's not a bad trip either. So you can extend that. So that should be a really nice game in terms of what that. And as AD talked about, you're talking about going back into that old SIAC history. So you'll even get some of the older fans that are intrigued about what that looks like. And so I think that's a fascinating matchup to kind of jump things off and from a conference perspective. And then you just go back to South Carolina State. South Carolina State looked like we could bury Coach Pugh the year before last. He came back the previous year and really showed that he has that football program back to running. So you talk about a strong non-conference game in terms of 2 FCS powers. That's going to be interesting there. The fact that you got them at home is really good. You know, you're going to get South Carolina fans to travel down there. So just in terms of what it looks like for home contests and what the attendance is going to be for FAMU this year, you're talking about it's starting to run in a really good direction when you start looking at these 2 schools coming to Tallahassee.
I'll just be brief. The Alabama State game would be the second largest home attendance outside of homecoming as far as an on-campus game.
Oh, wow. Good point.
Okay. Hey, mark that down, the AD prediction. All right. First time the Rattlers travel outside of the state of Florida will be on October 16th, where they travel to Huntsville, Alabama, and take on at Alabama A&M. Of course, the only trip to the state of Alabama. And then the following week, October 23rd at Mississippi Valley State. Any quick thoughts on those 2 road trips, fellas?
Yeah, I like Alabama A&M with Coach Maynard. I think that's going to be a dogfight in terms of a team. You got a senior quarterback. It looks like he'll be coming back in terms of that. We'll see whether he decides to move on or playing his last year in the spring, or does he decide to exercise the NCAA rule that will allow them to come back in the fall. We also see that the fact that you talk about recruiting between FAMU and Jackson State. Well, you have 4-star, 3-star freshman quarterback. They're just freshmen, but they're coming into Alabama with that mix, and Coach Maynard in that. Easy trip for FAMU fans, so you got to see that they're going to come up there. So that's going to be interesting to kind of rekindle that rival, as you said, the SIAC. That would be interesting in terms of the first SWAC road trip. And then quickly in terms of Valley. In navigating, as Drew said earlier, there are some 2-lane roads. That's one of the first 2-lane trips that you get into a small area is Itta Bena. So just what does that mean going into a different place? I think Itta Bena is one of those programs that are still seeking to see if they can get those scholarships up. They do have Coach Dansby. He's working hard there. And so I think it's a game that FAMU, frankly, will win pretty easily, but it's one that they can't overlook, and it's going to start out tough. Their Valley will play you extremely tough the first half, and if you don't find a way to stretch out them and let them know that you mean business, you can find yourself in a dogfight, and if you're not careful, things can get pretty strange down there in Valley as you start talking about SWAC countries. Things can happen down different places in the SWAC on the road.
you got a 6-hour bus trip followed by approximately an 8-hour bus trip. When you talked about Huntsville from Tallahassee to Itta Bena, probably 8 to 10 hour bus trip right there. So doing those in back-to-back weeks, going to be an interesting dynamic. Plus, those are the furthest teams to the north that FAMU will play, and during that time, that's when the weather gets a little funny. You know, you get there on Friday and it's 70 degrees, and when you go to play on Saturday, it's 40 degrees. So just a couple of interesting dynamics during that time of the year that the Rattlers may have to deal with.
Well said. I'm October 30th, Grambling homecoming for FAMU. I'm calling it now. The most unbearable group is not going to be Jackson State. It's going to be Grambling for Rattler Nation. And I'll tell you for two fronts. One, the 5-10 series record that FAMU has against Grambling. And then Coach Simmons being 0-3 against Coach Fobbs. They're just going to be unbearable, Rattler Nation. I'm telling you now, just be ready for Grambling. It'll be a nice tune-up for Southern, because Grambling will be unbearable to deal with that week, and it's homecoming. So, thoughts, fellas?
Oh, I think you said it perfectly. Take it from me, Prairie View, individual dealing with Grambling and going through the losing streak and finally getting some payback. And then, as you said, Willie did have, while he took care of business pretty much against everybody else, he struggled in the State Fair Classic against Grambling. But we got Dooley now, and Dooley is finding a way to make it miserable on Grambling, so I laugh at that. They get it done. But you're right, a program with a lot of great history. And they'll let you know that they got the G on their chest or the helmet or whatever, and they have this mythical framework about who they are. So, yeah, you're just going to have to deal with it and find a way to get it done on the field, because the noise talking, it's just going to be a knockdown, drag out between what that looks like. And they'll bring up all the tools of the chess, records, championships, last matchup, all those kind of things to let you know how they feel about moving forward in that matchup. And then they're going to throw in there the fact that you scheduled them for homecoming, which obviously in this case is what other game you're going to schedule for homecoming. The rest of them around it are road games, so you don't control the schedule in terms of the conference, so you do what you got to do. But if you're going to talk about bringing a homecoming crowd and really having a great game for your homecoming fans to get into in terms of a prime matchup, this is a good one.
Doc, question for you. What is usually do the bands normally in the SWAC, do they travel for the opponent's homecoming? Because that's something Rattler Nation, I don't think we've had too many of the opposing teams' bands come to brag for homecoming. What's that normally like in the SWAC?
It's really between the two institutions. What you see in the SWAC between band directors, generally speaking, if a band travels to you, then it's just a good rule of thumb that you're going to travel back to that institution to just kind of show them love. So some of that is going to have to do with just that platform and then the uniqueness of the schedule. So if it falls just right, they'll do it. But oftentimes what you find out with institutions, even if a band wants to come, the question becomes of how long the halftime show will be. And so oftentimes there's a general agreement where the school will say, hey, we're going to use so much of the halftime because of presentations. You're welcome to come, but you're not going to be able to participate on the field. And oftentimes that means they won't come. So it's a negotiation space. I've seen it both ways, depending just how much integral the homecoming space is. Now, generally in the SWAC, and pretty much you see this across HBCUs, they will call the SWAC office and ask for that extra time for halftime for homecoming, but still sometimes it's not enough to have both teams play halftime.
An extra 15 minutes, a Super Bowl halftime. Is that what they'll ask for?
Yeah, what they call the SWAC homecoming halftime, like the Super Bowl. Yeah,
you might need it if Grambling's band happens to come, and because the 100 show on homecoming, that's a full 15 plus minutes. So yeah,
I don't know what's gonna be worse: the football fans trash talking to each other back and forth, or the band people talking to each other, trash talking to each other back and forth. If those two dynamics come together.
Yes, sir, indeed. November 6th, FAMU travels to Southern. That's one of the 3 cross-division games. That'll be the big matchup. We talked about it a little earlier at the beginning of the show, a rematch. Coach Simmons against Coach Dawson Odoms. 2-2. Of course, last year, FAMU, not last year, 2019, the last time they played, FAMU won that game 27-21. A great crowd. I expect a similar great crowd in Baton Rouge for that game. And then November.
Bryan, before you go there, assuming we were through COVID, is that stadium big enough for this game? Because we know that was the largest non-homecoming attended game in Bragg history the last time they met. And their stadium is like 23,000. Is that, is that stadium big enough?
No, it's not big enough, but they're not going to move their game. They're going to want that at home.
And I'm just saying, and the reason I bring that up, the atmosphere of that game, fitting 25,000 into a 22,000 seat stadium, because once again, fire marshal may be there trying to keep people from coming in that particular game.
They'll just get their cut.
November 13th, FAMU travels to Arkansas Pine Bluff. That'll be a first ever matchup between the two schools in Arkansas Pine Bluff, at Arkansas Pine Bluff. Doc, anything Rattler Nation needs to know about traveling to Arkansas Pine Bluff?
Yeah, when you get in there, you're going to be surprised. It's a relatively new stadium. It's still kind of small, but it's newest, and so the amenities are there. Really good fans, entertaining. What you'll find out about Pine Bluff, they're a team that is tough because you don't necessarily get your team up for them. And so hopefully maybe being in there the first year that Willie Simmons can kind of do that. But it's a team that if you let them stick around, it's like Valley, but on steroids. They really going to make it rough for you. If you start beating them up, then you kind of roll away with the scores, and it can get pretty ugly pretty quick. The thing that you want to think about Arkansas Pine Bluff, Cedric, that was the former coach there the last 2 years, really did a rebuilding project. He started with young players. So know those players, if they're staying around, they're juniors now, sophomore, juniors, and seniors. So it's going to start to be a more mature team. So it's going to be interesting to see what the new coach coming in, what he's able to do, and what they were doing during the off season. So this is a tricky matchup in terms of one that's probably off your radar. Obviously, it's before the big game in Florida Classic. And so in some ways, it can be a trap game if you're not careful coming after, as we just talked about, the height of Southern University, which is going to be a game depending on what Prairie View, Texas Southern schedule is. It's a game that I would even want to sneak out and get to check it out, because the atmosphere between Southern and FAMU is just electric over the years. And as it being rekindled and now a conference game, should just be bananas and crazy. But Arkansas Pine Bluff is what I would call a trap game.
Hey, that's a good point about that. Yeah, it's squeezed right in there between Southern and Bethune-Cookman, and there's no bye week for FAMU going into Bethune. It'll be interesting to see who Bethune has to play when their schedule comes out. Who does Bethune have to play the week before? Are they traveling? Are they on the road? So it'll be interesting. And then, of course, November 20th, the Florida Classic. FAMU, Bethune could decide the Eastern Division title. Let's just keep it real. That's what it could come down to.
No doubt about it. I mean, it's been for the conference championship, the MEAC, many years before, at least over the last decade. So it wouldn't surprise me at all that it comes down to the fact that this is another game that's going to decide who's going to represent, not for a conference championship this time, but who will play for a conference championship. And what's intriguing about it, as we kind of teased out earlier, it could be talking about who's going to get the home game for the conference championship, which will really make things interesting as you go into it. So those are some of the thoughts when I talk about Bethune-Cookman as you coming out of that Pine Bluff game. It's going to be fascinating as people get into it. And then the fact now you're going to have more football fans' eyes on that game. Because one thing about the SWAC, they watch the SWAC football. They watch their team, but they watch the SWAC. And so they're going to have their eyes in terms of what's going on in Florida now a little more than they've ever had before. So don't be surprised if you get these SWAC fans that are in that area that come out to that game more than they ever have before.
Yeah,
I just think that's going to be a heck of a week when you talk about the Florida Classic opening up that Thanksgiving week. Then you've got the Turkey Day Classic, followed by the Bayou Classic. That's just a smorgasbord for any, not only SWAC fan, but football fan in general. And
Yeah,
would not surprise me if somebody else moves a game into that week just to try to get a piece of the action, because you're gonna have the eyes of all HBCU sports fans on the SWAC for about a 9-day stretch right there.
Yeah, you're right. 9 days, that's going to be a beautiful thing, talking about the just football smorgasbord of high-level teams and energy and fan bases going on.
It also, just by the numbers, if my numbers are right, again, FAMU has the career or the all-time record 49-24-1. This will be the 75th game between FAMU and Bethune-Cookman in later this year in November. So it'll be number 20 or 75. It's the longest running series on the schedule. Southern, they have played 60 games, have a career record, all-time record 33-26-1. And I think the other one that I noted, South Carolina State, they played 57 games previously with a 30-25-2 record against South Carolina State. So
that's a rivalry that started in the SIAC and then continued on in the MEAC also.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, that's the schedule that's out, and we await to see the rest of the schedule and see how that matrix works itself. And what's interesting, though, for Bethune and FAMU, and I guess this is pretty much everybody, you get that extra week before the SWAC championship game, because the Bayou Classic, Grambling and Southern, is the following week. And then the week after that is the SWAC championship game. So Bethune, FAMU, should that game decide, and one of those teams, hopefully it'll be FAMU, but one of those teams make it to the SWAC championship game, they will have an extra week. And who knows, they could be an extra week to kind of watch Grambling and Southern, who traditionally, that game kind of decides who ends up representing the West. At least it's done for the last several years, if I'm not mistaken, right, Doc?
Yeah, don't forget the Braves over there now.
I get that. I know they're over there now, but I'm just saying the Bayou has usually decided the West. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right, Drew. Alcorn will have a piece of that action and have a lot of say in that. But even with that being said, now you got to understand that previously Alcorn was coming out of the East. And so the teams that gave them the most fits and made the race even interesting in the East was Prairie View, Grambling, or Southern. And so even in this case, even with them coming over the East, depending on how that plays out, in a lot of ways, you could see that the Bayou Classic could still be impetus in terms of who's going to play in the SWAC championship game. Even if it's one of those type of things, if you think about it like this, Drew, it could be not just both of them going. It could be the fact that it could decide whether that team goes or somebody else goes, depending on what happens in that game. So there's multiple ways to look at how that game will certainly play into the picture of what's going to take place in the West as we move forward. But to your point in all this, this is the magic of the SWAC. And that's why it's like they say in a lot of different ways, it's on steroids now because just so much energy and action of week to week storylines that ultimately decide who's going to end up in the Celebration Bowl when all this is done.
Hey, Doc, have they released what the different tiebreaker scenarios may be? Obviously, if it's a two-way tie in a division, you're going to go with head-to-head. But I could potentially see A beat B, but B beat C and C lost to A scenarios with the SWAC because it's such a balanced conference. So have they released the information on any new tie-breaker formulas yet?
Not any new information, but we've had some of this. You don't see a lot of it, but there are some years.
Well, as a BIAC fan, we've seen five-way ties for conference championships before, which is why I have to ask that question.
No, I was just going to jump in there. Unlike the BIAC.
Thank God for championship game.
You certainly have seen some three-way tie scenarios, or at least where it was in action, so they released that. So they do have basic formulas that talk about multiple ties between 3-4 teams even. There was a conversation where it could have happened, it didn't happen, but it went in the scenario. And so essentially what you do is, SWAC, you have the head-to-head, and then you have what they call record against the top team. And so have you succeeded down, that's how it comes out. And then it has the dreaded one, if it gets so complicated, they
coin
do
flip.
Have coin flip, which we've never, there was one year where people were just going crazy because it could have happened, but it has never happened in the SWAC. But there's so many different ways to get to a coin flip. Usually it plays its way out. In terms of point differential, they have a point differential against teams at the top, point differential against the lower teams. And then it even has a point differential going to teams against the other division. In terms of how they finish. So it's a really nice breakdown where it usually does not come to a coin flip quite like what you've seen in the MEAC, where it comes to it pretty quickly.
So as somebody who's been in the BIAC for pretty much all of their HBCU life, we're not going to have a scenario where we're not going to know who's going to be the clear East winner and the West representative in the championship game. It's going to be pretty cut and dry because the SWAC has those formulas already in place.
That's correct.
All right. Well, hey, thank you, anyone who's been watching and stuck around with us. Thank you for joining us and being a part of the broadcast. I want to definitely.
Connor Clark's been on here with us, Bryan.
I'm sorry?
Greg Clark. Colonel Greg Clark.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Hey, Colonel
been
Greg
on
Clark.
here with us.
Let me give a couple plugs again. Let me make sure to mention thank you to Coach Willie Simmons, VP, AD Kortne Gosha, representing Florida A&M University, of joining us. Want to remind everyone, go to FAMUathletics.com. That's where you can get more information about season ticket packages if you are interested in doing that. And I've heard different things about hotel rooms in Tallahassee already starting to sell out and get booked for homecoming and things of that nature. Little pro tip here, Airbnb, you might want to start looking into that in Tallahassee. But also want to make sure to mention orangeblossomclassic.com is where you can get ticket information for that September 5th matchup between FAMU and Jackson State. Again, that's individual tickets are available. And who knows, you might want to get in early because we don't know what September will look like, if they will allow 60,000 plus or whether it's a percentage of that number. So the sooner you get in to get your tickets, the better off you will be. Any other site-wide plugs, fellas, that I may have forgotten or need to give before you give your individual plugs?
No, I think you broke it down appropriately in terms of get your tickets early. If you get into this, it's going to be one of those seasons that you don't want to forget or can't forget. So get involved and support your programs.
Hey, number one, be flexible. Not only as we continue in the springtime, but as we get to the fall, things are still in flux. And on a personal plug, go back and watch our Best of 2020 show, which is available on the BCSN SportsWrap page and on the my BCSN.net website. Bryan and I took a deep dive into all the major events from 2020. So it'll be a good refresher from where we came from and hopefully where we're going.
And the podcast is available everywhere you listen to podcasts: Spotify, Google and Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Overcast, even on the iHeartRadio app. You can find our podcast. Just search BCSN SportsWrap. You can also find Doc's show, Inside the HBCU SportsLab. That is in podcast form as well. And also everywhere you may, it is on YouTube, on Facebook. Even you can get access to it if you have the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. You can access that as well. Not only Doc's show, but our show as well. Just go to your Google or Apple Play Store, search My JBN or My BCSN, and download that app if you would. Doc, tell the people when the next show is coming and the plug. How can they reach you if they want to?
Certainly. Check us out on Tuesday, every Tuesday at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. Check us out on Dr. Cavill's Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop, my two co-hosts, as they give you an inside look at what's going on in the lab across the HBCU landscape. Obviously, we look at the HBCU sports culture, athletic aesthetics, as we like to talk about it and call it. The sporting HBCU asks for everything you want to know about HBCU sports and then some, right there every Tuesday from 6 o'clock. As you said, Bryan, you can check us out live on Facebook. Check us out and subscribe on YouTube, along with all the ways that you can catch us. And then again, you can go to my JBN/my BCSN to check us out on the app. So we're everywhere. So no excuses. We love for the support us. We try to do a diligent job of getting you all the things you need. And I just want to say Happy New Year's to both of you all and our fans. And thank you for letting me be a part of this inaugural announcement of FAMU schedule officially taking off in the SWAC for 2021. After 100 years of SWAC competition in history, this is a great way to kick off the next 100 years.
Well said. Well said. I want to give a special shout out to our team behind the scenes, Kofi Hemingway, Kelvin Rozier, our producer, Roy Evans, for all the help and work they did in helping to make this possible. Again, thank all of you for watching, listening. Share it. Share this with some friends, whether they be Rattlers or not, if they're SWAC, part of SWAC Nation now. So share this among SWAC Nation. Make sure you're liking and subscribing our shows so that way whenever we have something, you'll be informed and know when it is coming on. Drew, you can find Drew on Twitter at BCSN Drew. That's where he's at on Twitter. You can find Doc at it's at Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, correct?
That's correct. Yep. We have it.
Yep. DrKenyattaCavil on Twitter. And of course, you can find me at DRB365. Find the Black College Sports Network at my BCSN1, the number one. Drew, I'm trying to get us out of here. What do you got, buddy?
New rankings, new polls come out Tuesday. So
yes.
new rankings, new players of the week come out Tuesday. Make sure you come back to the website for that.
Doc, I can't wait to hear you guys talk about that matchup between two of the lowest rated basketball teams in men's basketball. I'm not going to say names, but somebody blew somebody out, which I think just solidifies who might be the lowest rated team in college basketball. I'm not going to say names. I'm just going to say it and let you guys talk about it on Tuesday.
Hey, on the positive side, how Morgan State's winning.
Ryan, great job there. I appreciate you teasing that out. That's a great way.
Did Drew talk?
Even though I echo what you said, yeah, it's a stinker.
Yeah, Drew, what was that you were saying?
On the flip side, we did have the matchup of Howard's women and Morgan State's women on this past Saturday. You know, and they are definitely not the lowest rated teams on the women's side.
No, Howard's women keep rolling. Go ahead, Lady Bison. I'm paying attention. I'm watching. I'm a big fan, becoming a fan every week. All right, that's going to do it for all of us here at the Black College Sports Network. Thank you guys for watching. Welcome to the SWAC FAMU. We look forward to the next team or the other teams that'll be dropping their announcements as well. For, again, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, and for AD Drew, I'm Bryan Fulford. Be safe, mask up, and peace out.
Sugar Chateau Desserts is a specialty bakery located in the Charlotte, North Carolina metro area. We will create delicious and one-of-a-kind treats for any occasion. Sugar Chateau is currently shipping cakes in a jar, offering a variety of different flavors in a single-serve container that can help you celebrate in accordance with social distancing. Place your orders today by calling 803-526-7895 or visiting sugarchateaudesserts.com.
At Hampton Law, our primary goal is to provide non-traditional yet effective solutions and redefine the approach to client legal concerns. As your trusted legal advisor, we believe in sophisticated, personalized services that eliminate the confusion and complexity sometimes associated with legal matters. Our high standard for client care and concern, coupled with our extensive legal knowledge and skills, make Hampton Law a resource focused on the protection of the client's interest and overall goals. We value our clients and truly enjoy working with them. Visit thamptonlaw.com to conveniently schedule an appointment online. Tamika Hampton Esquire, 1631 Rock Springs Road, Suite 336, Apopka, Florida. 40